Only yesterday on the plane, I was going through my old notes section of my phone, and I found a whole thing on reasons not to do Thorpe. Because I always try and find a reason not to do a job, because acting scares me so much. Morris. I was in a very dark place. Actually, it wasn't dark because I'd given up. I was writing and producing radio commercials, and I was extremely happy doing it. And I wasn't interested in acting anymore. Then my agent, who I hadn't spoken to for months, rang and said, oh, they want to see you for this Merchant Ivory film. And I said, no, I can't be bothered. And my brother, who's a banker, and very bossy, who happened to be at home sick that day, I was living with him, said, don't be ridiculous. You've got to go. You need some money. I'm sick of paying for you. So he made me sort of get dressed up, and I went. And they were kind enough to like me. That was the first sort of propulsion into movies. I didn't know what to expect. It came out very well. People sometimes say to me, oh, were you worried about playing a gay role? And I wasn't at all. Never sort of struck me as that was in any way difficult or dangerous or controversial. I remember the Venice Film Festival, the world premiere of the film. I'm sitting next to James Wilby and James Ivory and Ishmael Merchant in the front row of the sort of circle. And at the end of the film, the audience really loved it. And they stood up and they clapped for a long time. And then the tradition at Venice is that we, the filmmakers, stand up to accept the applause. What I had forgotten is that my suit was much too tight, and I'd undone it, and I'd undone my trousers quite early in the film, and I completely forgot to do them up. So it did look odd that at the end of this gay film, I stand up and bow solemnly to everyone, next to my co-star with my trousers undone. 4 weddings and a funeral. I got the script and I thought, well, there must be some mistake. My agent has sent me a good script. So I rang them up and I said, I think there's been a mistake. You sent me a good script. They did that once before, actually, with Jerry Maguire. And I said, I think there's a mistake here. And they said, yes, sorry, that is a mistake. That was meant for Tom Cruise. With 4 weddings, it was meant for me. And anyway, it was only an audition. And I went along and I auditioned among the Muppets. They were all around me. And I remember thinking, this is going quite well. The director looks like he likes me, but the writer really hates me. That was Richard Curtis, and he admits he did hate me. He had a completely different conception of that part. He'd written it in his own image. He thought it was him, and didn't think that it should be someone who he thought might get the girl. He thought it should be more like him, more kind of nerdish with the glasses. Anyway, he had his arm twisted, and I got the part. The haircut became quite popular, yeah. With some, I always hated it. The haircut and the clothes are meant to be terrible, and the haircut's meant to be terrible. Shortly before we stopped shooting that film, at one lunchtime, they said, okay, everyone, all the crew, into this room, we're going to show you some cut footage of what we've shot so far. It was meant to be morale boosting. And it played to sepulchral silence. Nothing has ever been worse, except for Rowan's bit. Rowan's bit got a laugh, but the rest of it was just abominable. And we all trudged back onto the set, broken men and women. And we remained in that mood through finishing the film, through editing it, through the first look at it. We just thought, well, we're all going to have to go and live in Peru. And then they had this screening in Santa Monica in Los Angeles, and the audience loved it. It was very odd. The speech pad was very much written in, convoluted syntax. If I were to ask you, could you possibly ever see your way? I mean, I'm not saying you would, but if you might, to falling in love with me, all that stuff. That's Richard writing that stuff. And then Mike Newell, who directed that film, wanted it even more messed up. He said, look, it'll be a disaster if you look smooth. So, mess up the lines and break them up and all that. So I did all that. And then when that film was a success, possibly subliminally, I let it bleed into other parts, which was a big mistake. Sense and Sensibility. Emma Thompson adapted Sense and Sensibility. She got Ang Lee to direct it, and they offered me that part. And I saw the part of Edward Ferrars, and I said, well, he's a bit of a hesitant, in-love Englishman. I don't think I should do that again. And they said, no, we know you can do it very differently. So I said, all right then. And then I did exactly the same. Ang Lee I think that was his first non-Taiwanese film. He hadn't mastered yet the art of how to talk to sensitive British actors. I remember doing my first scene with Emma, and I thought we were marvellous. And we went up to Ang afterwards, who was sitting there at the monitor. He said, what do you think, Ang? What do you think? And he went, very boring. And that was very disheartening. And he famously said to Kate Winslet at the end of her first day's shooting, you will get better. So he was scary, but very charming. Notting Hill, the goodwill from Four Weddings was dissipating fast. Then Richard wrote this other film, and it was based on something that he actually happened to a friend of his, who was a kind of very unfamous bloke living in Notting Hill, who happened to fall in love with an extremely, extremely world-famous person, who I'm not allowed to mention, and she with him. So it was based on that. It's such an obvious idea for a film. I can't believe it's never been made before, and it just seemed like it was going to be dynamite. And then they managed to persuade, the then biggest star in the world, Julia Roberts, to do it, and then we managed to not screw it up too badly. And it was just obviously a mega hit at that moment, because it's really properly romantic, and that's the key to his films. They're called romantic comedies, and he actually is funny. The jokes are good, but what's special is that they are genuinely romantic because he's a romantic. Poor old Richard was always in love and being rejected, and all that's real, rather than fake ersatz kind of Hollywood romance. Bridget Jones's Diary. Daniel Cleaver's quite sort of West London, smooth, upper middle class. Can't remember why they came to me. Maybe she thought I was right for it. I mean, all the way through those fluffy films, Four Weddings, Notting Hill, it had amused Richard and his gang, his wife, everyone, that people thought I was that nice, fluffy character, because they knew that I wasn't. I was much closer to, for instance, Daniel Cleaver. So I think it was fun for them to then slot me into a role that was closer to the real me. About a Boy. It's a novel by Nick Hornby, and a really good one. Possibly it's slightly based on himself, maybe, but I'd been sort of tracking it for ages, and it was being made by a different company, and that director didn't want me. And then it got shifted over to the Whites brothers, and I met them, and we all got on really well. And they were making it actually with De Niro's company, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. I loved hanging out with Bob, going nightclubbing with him. I felt very cool doing that. The boy in About a Boy needed to be someone nerdy, a loser, someone who was going to get bullied. And we found Nick, and he was a great actor, but he was too good looking, so we gave him a shit haircut, terrible clothes. But I see now the dish has triumphed. He's a massive star. Will, in About a Boy, is North London. He's more demotic, trendy, cool. The clothes I had then were cool for that period. It was a great part and transforming for me. And what I've now realised, because you might not hear it or see it, but because I'm doing an accent in that, and really it's doing a performance that's much further away from me, it was very releasing, and I'm much better when I'm doing that. That's what's come home to me in the last 5 years. Get away from yourself, and I'm actually better. When you're being someone else, moving like them, talking like them, it takes care of the self-consciousness problem. Love Actually. Well, the Prime Minister is really, again, written rather like Richard Curtis himself. And so when I read this, I thought this is going to be a huge hit. But I don't really want to be that same character again. I'll get crucified. So I said to Richard, it can't just be that guy from Notting Hill and from Four Weddings. He said, no. It's quite different. He's much tougher and harder. I went, right, tougher, harder, yes, he is. And then I just did exactly the same character as Four Weddings and Notting Hill. The dancing scene was a terrible cloud hanging over the whole production for me. And, it's hard enough to dance if you're English and middle-aged, even with 6 pints inside you. But by yourself, so stone-cold sober at 7 in the morning in front of a film crew, to freak out was going to be misery. Not only that, but I thought the scene had the capacity for being the most excruciating scene ever committed to celluloid. And there are plenty of people who still think it is. But equally, there are lots of people who seem to love it. Cloud Atlas.
Could you explain the plot of Cloud Atlas?
No one could. It's kind of slightly about reincarnation, as I recall. All my people are vile. Out of the blue, the very cool Wachowskis wanted me to play 5 or 6 parts in this extraordinary, the most expensive independent film ever made. I went to meet them to see if it was some kind of joke on me, and it didn't seem to be. and I liked them a lot. So I did it, and it seemed irresistible to play a cannibal from the 23rd century. And then I thought, well, I'm bound to be good at that. That's because that's so fascinating. And then I didn't really think about it too much until I was suddenly on a mountaintop in Germany with my teeth and my makeup and my tattoos. And I thought, I've no idea how to do this. And I had one of the Wachowskis saying, come on, man, you look at him like you want to fucking eat him. And I thought, I don't have that face. Give me a funny line, I could do that. Not sure I was very good as the cannibal, but I was quite good in some of the other parts. And I think all actors like to be evil. I think because it smells true. I've got this horrible feeling now I'm 57 that we are evil, and that our veneer of civilization and niceness is very, very thin. So when you're allowed to be your true evil self, it just sort of smells right, feels right, it's fun to play. Florence Foster Jenkins. In Florence Foster Jenkins, I am half good, half bad. I'm a marvellously supportive husband and sort of manager to Meryl Streep's increasingly deranged amateur singer. But you're supposed to think, I think people did think, what's his real motive? Does he really love her, or is he in it for himself? And hopefully people, think both simultaneously. I certainly thought he was both, which I think is also very human. We can be loving, unselfish, and deeply narcissistic and selfish simultaneously. And that was what he was. Meryl's a very good singer in real life, and probably that's why she was able to be bad so well. So she would sing badly, and when she first demonstrated that at one of the read-throughs, I just thought, well, that's genius. And it was incredibly funny, it really makes you laugh. But like all funny things, as you repeat them, you laugh a little bit less, as is to be expected. She knew that, and so sometimes if I was on camera watching her and she was off camera, she'd just dial it up, double it to screw me up, make me laugh. She was very good at that. Actors like playing actors, or people in show business. They think this will be fascinating, but actually the world hates actors, quite rightly. The key to that character, funnily enough, is the same key to the next film I did, Paddington 2. Narcissism. They're all narcissists. I don't know why I keep getting off of these parts, but anyway, that's incredibly human, that really were just obsessed with looking out for ourselves. And it was certainly the key to Bayfield in Florence Foster Jenkins. He was a crap actor, the real Bayfield, or at least very moderate, very mediocre, and yet dazzled by the limelight. Just the limelight. And he had, therefore, the same disease as poor Florence Foster Jenkins, who was the world's worst singer, but just wanted to be on stage at Carnegie Hall, everyone looking at her. And you meet these people, they are very common in life. And anyway, so that was definitely the curse of Phoenix Buchanan in Paddington 2. Paddington 2. Paul King, who wrote and directed it, likes to tell this story, that he wrote a part of a washed-up, narcissistic old actor, called it Hugh, and sent it to me first. They did actually change the name when they sent it to me, perhaps out of tact. But nevertheless, the letter that came with the script did say, we've written this narcissistic monster of a washed-up actor, and we thought of you. And it was very difficult to get past that letter. But then, it was a funny script, and I thought I could do that part. That film, Paddington, isn't there when you're shooting it, obviously, because he's created in a computer afterwards. Instead, you have a choice. You have a choice every time I was doing a scene with the bear. I could have stick with a bear's head on the end, which was actually a very sinister thing. I didn't even like looking at it. It looked like a kind of warning to bears, don't come into this area, you'll have your head cut off. Or you could have this stand-in lady who was the same height as Paddington. She was great, but I ended up with a stick. I became quite fond of the stick in the end. We used to have lunch together. A very English scandal. I was about to do something else. I was having dinner with Stephen Frears one night. He said, no, don't do that. I got something else. And then he sent me these scripts. And I thought, television? I don't do television. But it was him, and I love him. And we seemed to, we made a successful film together. It's a fascinating story. It's a very interesting part of history. It's my childhood. The book was brilliant in that it brought out the black comedy of the whole thing, very mischievous. And then the screenwriter is extraordinary, Russell T Davies. He's a proper genius. So I had to say yes. In the courtroom scenes, when there's long push-ins on my face, no actor really likes it. Because you start well, you think, I'm banging character here, as the camera dollies in for 16 bloody hours. After sort of 10 seconds, you think, I'm slipping out of character, I'm getting self-conscious. And by a minute into it, You think, what's happened to my jaw? I can't even feel it anymore. Actors decide to do jobs for various reasons, but I think the two main ones are, is it a very fascinating and showy role for them? And the other one is, will this thing work? But I've always been absolutely fixated on, will it also be an entertaining thing? Because if not, this is a wank. What's the point of it? So for me, this one had both. I thought people are definitely going to enjoy this because it's such a weird story. It's sort of tragic and repulsive and yet at the same time funny. And equally, this is a great part. He was a man I sort of knew the breed. My mother was at Oxford in the 50s. And the friends she'd made there used to come to dinner sometimes when I was a kid, and they were very Jeremy Thorpe, very smooth and charming and reptilian. So I knew that breed, and then here was this sort of epitome of one of those guys with all this, not just dark secrets and a weird, sort of nasty, narcissistic side, but also tragedy. Jeremy Thorpe was never able to be himself, never able to love someone in his own way, which happened to be gay. And that's deeply tragic. That's one of his tragedies. And then his other tragedy is a more sort of classic Greek or Shakespearean one, which is that one event in his life gradually brings him down. Having built himself up with a terrific career and life and reputation, this thing just destroys him.